think you're right. I think Fitzgibbon's a man of integrity. I think he's a solid operator. He has been for many, many years, straight as an arrow. And there's no place, obviously, for a guy like that in the Labor front bench.
Joel Fitzgibbons quits amid climate criticism. Apparently, he had a big shouting match in the Labor Party room. So Joel Fitzgibbons, guys, he was on the shadow cabinet, and now he's moved to the backbench because he's had a lot of disagreements with the cabinet there, especially the shadow cabinet, especially Anthony Albanese, who he had who's obviously the leader of the shadow ministry right now. Now, 2019 was a big indictment on, this is one of the big lessons. It was a big indictment on Labor's approach to climate change. It really was. People didn't like the radicalism, it turns out. People liked their jobs. People liked fossil fuels. People like low energy costs. Now, the Liberal Party, they're a light version of Labor, but they were better, more or less on these issues than Labor. Labor they have become the Greens. That's just the reality. Joel Fitzgibbons, learning this lesson after they did their review on the failings of the Labor Party and pinning it to Bill Shorten, they had a look at this and they said, we need to scale this back. Joel Fitzgibbons was a voice for scaling this back. So it does actually pain me to see Joel lose his position. I think he's very astute, whether he believes these things or not. I think he truly believes in I feel like he's a holdout blue-collar Labor Party. Maybe Mark Latham could be a Mark Latham in a few years. Who knows? It is strange to see him go because he was, honestly, Riccardo, he was honestly arguing anywhere. He would appear on any channel. He'd go on Sky News, wherever he wanted. And he would say, we need a more common sense approach to this. We can't decimate the economy because of this. Maybe we need to start looking to nuclear. Maybe we need to start, we can't just completely cut, fossil fuels entirely. We need to look at jobs. And he's right. Those are my points. He stole my argument points. And that's the funny thing. I couldn't tell if he was me or if he was, or like an Australian Conservative candidate from last year. And so, he was a real... I was actually trying to get him on the show, Riccardo. He seems like a real... If he succeeded, he would have been a real weapon for the party. If the party went down that road, Labor probably could win the next election. But they're just too radical. The progressives are really doubling down, and you can see the battle within that party, which is very fascinating. But what are your thoughts towards that? Because we've talked about party reformation, and it seems like it's a fool's gambit. I agree with that. But I have to admit, when I see people like this, Joel Fitzgibbons, trying honestly to reform the party, perhaps not receiving the support he needs from the constituency with emails supporting him and, telling their own ministers, why aren't you backing him? It does pain me to see this because it's just like, it's bullying. In my view. Now, he should be able to take it, but at the same time, it just pains me because I know that this is what the people want. What are your thoughts about all that?
This is why the Labor vote in certain seats, those that predominantly rely upon those foundational economic issues, price of electricity, coal mines, steel towns, things like that. That's why the people will vote for anybody. They will never vote Liberal. Right? Your traditional Labor voter will never vote Liberal. And the Labor Party is becoming increasingly on the nose. They're not interested in voting Labor, but there's nobody else. And we found this at the last federal election, where we were told as the Conservatives to contest the strong Liberal seats, which is insane, because the Liberals were going to do that. And what we found, because we didn't necessarily take their advice. And the seats in which we contested were strong Labor seats, and we picked up a massive swing towards us because the Labor people were happy to vote away from Labor if they had a reasonable alternative.
Wow.
So they would never vote Liberal, and I get that.
Yeah.
The rusted-ons didn't want to vote Liberal, but they were looking for a reasonable alternative. And the fact that Fitzgibbon is now gone is a tragedy for good, solid, traditional Labor values and good, solid, traditional Labor people. That's a bad sign because it's almost as if the Labor Party is following some agenda regardless of what the people want. So they're not looking after the working men and women of Australia anymore. Not at all. Some of the big corrupted unions are no longer looking after the Australian people. And so this is a tragedy for your solid Labor voters. Who the hell are they going to vote for now? Because as you said, the Labor Party main is green, and the Green are communist, and that's where it's going. They can see the policies are destroying the nation, and they're doing nothing to fight them. They're not providing an alternative, because when the government and the opposition are in lockstep, and there's a term that people should be very afraid of, when they're in lockstep, either the situation is extremely critical or there's some bad things going on. And we know that the COVID thing is a setup. Everyone, the data's there. Yeah. I don't need to repeat it. But this is bad news for Labor and good Labor people and good Labor values. It really is. Because I think you're right. I think Fitzgibbon's a man of integrity. I think he's a solid operator. He has been for many, many years, straight as an arrow. And there's no place, obviously, for a guy like that in the Labor front bench.
Yeah, I say he would have been really dangerous if the party went down that line, because, as you know, I'm actually I'm weakest on Australian politics. I watched what the UK did last year. They were dealt a overwhelming defeat. The Conservatives won an 80-seat majority, 80 more seats than the Labor Party in the UK, an 80-seat safe majority. And there were seats in the UK where Labor hadn't lost in 100 years. 100 years.
Bloody hell.
I know. Actually, that also happened. This is another one of the irregularities, just as a side note with America. There are counties for 100 years that hadn't gone Republican. And this is how I know these bastards are doing something. Just a side note. This is just a side note. But in the UK, just like what you said, you run in seats where Labor they'd never vote Conservative, but they'd consider something in the middle. The Brexit Party did that. They didn't contest. Nigel Farage pulled out in a number of seats, but he stayed in the Labor ones, and he ate away at those vote counts. So the Conservatives swooped in.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of it I think that ensured the Conservative Party won, and that in turn ensured that Brexit got across the line at that point, but they still have to fight their battles. Now, the Labor Party over there, they had been going through a bunch of different issues, and I know, I'm telling you guys about this because I know can you believe I've got 1,000 followers just on Facebook? For my profile, I don't have many followers. I've got 6,000 followers, that's it. And 1,000 of them are from the UK. Isn't that crazy?
Brilliant.
I mean, I'm based in Australia. I've got like 20 Americans, 1,000 UK people, and then the rest are Australians, which makes sense. But a lot of UK people, they like the commentary I do on it. And the thing I found with their analysis, their post-mortem, after their historic defeat, 100-year defeat, what they were looking at was Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labor Party there. People were talking about him the same way we were talking about Bill Shorten. When Bill Shorten becomes Prime Minister, that's what John Anderson told me in a coffee one time. That's how people were talking about Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. They were saying when he becomes Prime Minister. And they were going through a bunch of problems there with radicalism, their green policies. They were also going through a bunch of things with anti-Semitism. I don't know what their problem is with the Jews. Just every time things get bad, they go for the Jews first, poor people. And so that party, what they did was they then moved to the centre. They actually reformed. And the Labor Party are in a very dangerous position in the UK right now. If they had an election today, there's a very good chance Labor could win government. I'm not even kidding.
Is that right?
Keir Starmer is the guy who, he worked a lot with Jeremy Corbyn, but he didn't have he didn't control a lot what happened in the Labor Party before the December election last year in the UK. He is the Labor leader now, and he has pretty much reformed the Labor Party so that it's trying to get rid of the anti-Semitism and the radicalism and hide it, at least. And he is a very likable guy. Just listen to him, guys. I've listened to more parliamentary debates over in the UK, more hours of it than I'm care to admit. But he is... You've got to watch it. You'll see what I mean when I say it's dangerous when you get a guy like Joel Fitzgibbons who's speaking logic in these parties. I say dangerous, why? I do want common sense people in government, but what I don't want is for them to win government and then the radical side of the party, like what's happening with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who's more progressive than Bernie Sanders, them lynching the guy, and then progressives get in because they will never get in on a progressive ticket. That's the worry.
Hence the sheep in wolf's clothing.
Exactly.
The Fabian Society. That's the way they do it. That's their logo.
Exactly.
They're quite proud of it. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so look, there's your international analysis of that, guys. But this is why I watch overseas politics. Australia's at chapter 2. The UK is at bloody chapter 13, and the US is somewhere in the middle at chapter 8. We watch it so we can predict it. We predict it so that we can have contingency plans. One of the things that we've been alerted to is censorship. That's a big one. So keep an eye on this, guys. You know, look at, as Riccardo said, look at what's happening overseas, but you always have to translate it to what's happening here. Let's come back.